My friends, we have a new Black Panther coming to Marvel Champions. I think I'm about the only person I know whose favorite hero in the core set is Black Panther. So getting another Wakanda hero, getting Shuri here is pretty exciting for me. So this was just announced. It is coming after the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. expansion. This is going to be released in April, which is really exciting. And as usual, I'm going to get nerdy. We're going to really break down Black Panther, look at all the different moving pieces, how they're going to interact, what kind of experience you can expect when you play this character, what kind of aspect cards and decks they might like. Hopefully you guys really enjoy that. Before we get into it, I want to say I have just done a Nick Fury card reveal, 2 cards for Nick Fury that have never been seen before until, I revealed them like yesterday when this video comes out. So if you haven't seen it, go and check that out. That is on my channel. It should hopefully be suggested by YouTube somewhere around here. I'll put it in the description if I remember, which of course I will. So let's start with this identity card. Shuri has 4 recovery, genius and Wakanda traits, and Black Panther has 2 fort, 1 attack, 2 defense, and no Wakanda trait. What's really interesting to note here is that there's no Avenger trait, there's no Guardian, there's no X-Men, X-Force, anything like that. There is no major trait or even secondary trait like Champion or Web Warrior on Shuri or Black Panther on either side of the identity card. This is going to kind of lock them out of any kind of real trait specific cards, except stuff for Genius and Wakanda, which we have a couple for Genius and a couple new cards for Wakanda. But it's definitely an interesting choice. I think they could have very easily just snuck Avenger on there. I don't think anyone would have questioned that too much. So I'm, comment people let me know, is she just not associated with the Avengers at all or anything? But I found that quite a curious choice. I should also note, like the original Black Panther T'Challa, she has 11 hit points and the same hand size, the standard hand size, 6 alter ego, 5 in hero form. Now in alter ego, she has the Inventor ability. Action, exhaust Shuri, search your deck for a Black Panther or tech upgrade and play it, reducing its cost by 2, limit once per round. This is really good, really interesting, and this is the first sign that, like the original Black Panther T'Challa here, she is all about these Black Panther upgrades and using them, triggering their special abilities, which we can see on the hero side, which is response after Black Panther uses a basic power, and that is also including defense, so we can do things like defend and trigger these specials during the villain phase. After you use a basic power, resolve the special ability on 1 Black Panther upgrade you control. And this shows one of the biggest changes between Shuri Black Panther and T'Challa Black Panther. T'Challa Black Panther sets up these Black Panther upgrades, and then Wakanda Forever triggers all of them. Shuri is going to set up these upgrades, and she's going to trigger them one at a time, but won't necessarily need a Wakanda Forever event to do so. She actually does not have that event whatsoever. It's triggered differently in all cases. At a glance here, that 4 recovery stat I think is actually quite undesirable, because if you're alter ego with Shuri, the way to get most value very easily here is to use the Inventor ability. So if you get to search your deck for a certain card, Black Panther or tech upgrade, that's basically, putting an extra card in your hand effectively. It doesn't go into your hand, but you play it. If you normally want to play a card from hand, you lose that card, once it's been played because, you have played that card. Hopefully that makes sense. So this is already kind of like gaining 1 card theoretically here. Then you reduce the cost of it by 2. And I will say all the Black Panther upgrades we've seen, and I'm sure that we will see, are 2 or more cost. So, you're always going to get that 2 resource cost reduction. So you're kind of getting free resources here, more or less. I think that's basically the most accurate way to look at it. It's a little bit more powerful than that because you get to search for a specific card and play it, and that is pretty incredible. There are some small downsides here, some even like quite large downsides. You have to exhaust Shuri to search your deck for one of these upgrades. If she's exhausted from, searching and playing that upgrade, if you then flip down to hero form, you're going to be exhausted. You're not going to be able to, basic attack or basic fort to trigger the special on, a Black Panther upgrade. So you lose out on your hero ability if you're exhausted from your alter ego, and kind of vice versa. Maybe she's got some readying in her kit, but we have not seen that in the revealed cards yet. I have a suspicion she might have, maybe as an upgrade, but that's purely, I guess, I don't know. So don't put any, take that with a humongous pinch of salt. We'll have to see how that goes. But obviously you can deck build readies into her kit, but nonetheless, you still have 1 less activation that you could have used to trigger the response on the Black Panther side if you're exhausted for alter ego, and so on and so forth. Having 1 attack on the hero side is really interesting. Most characters with 1 attack have some other form of damage. Cyclops can, use his Optic Blast. Adam Warlock has his, Battle Mage. He can, sacrifice an aggression card to deal damage, or even boost his stats with a leadership card. There's something innate there. But with Black Panther, it's going to depend on what Black Panther upgrades you have out on the board, if you can choose one that deals damage. Otherwise, her starting damage might be a little bit low. And I think turn 1, when the game begins, most times you're probably going to want to, or at least be incentivized, to go and use your Inventor ability on alter ego. So you're going to exhaust, and then flip to hero form, and then you're exhausted. So if you play any scenarios, maybe like Claw, that starts with like a minion and side scheme out, you're going to be exhausted when you go to hero form, and you're going to have maybe a slightly harder time, at least reliably dealing with them, getting rid of some stuff on the first turn. So if you've played Jubilee, got the shopping spree in, and exhausted to start working on that, and then gone to hero form, I just found it hard to get some momentum back. There is maybe a small element of that here. I don't think it's quite the same because you have other cards and things that will be able to trigger the specials on her Black Panther upgrades when we look at them. But just starting off exhausting turn 1 is quite notable, and having to exhaust for Inventor does offset quite a lot of its benefits. It still is very beneficial, but rather than be, oh, I've gained 3 resources of value with my Alter Ego ability, I've got, a 2-cost, free effective resource card into play. You've exhausted, so you've definitely missed out on 4 recovery or 2 forwarding and triggering a Black Panther upgrade. So there's quite a significant hidden cost there. And let's say you start hero form, go Alter Ego, use your Inventor ability, get an upgrade into play. If you're Alter Ego, that upgrade's probably not doing anything, or not much at least, for the rest of the round. Then you're going to have to flip down, and there's just an element of slow tempo, not a lot happening immediately here. So almost in kind of the same way as T'Challa Black Panther, turn 1, if you're setting up like one of his Black Panther upgrades, you might not have a ton happen immediately. You might not have the explosive start of other characters, even if you can focus on trying to, go faster. Inherently, it's just not going to be quite on the same level as a lot of other heroes. One thing this Alter Ego ability reminds me of is meditation, but meditation is lost from hand, and Inventor doesn't, affect, the cards from your hand at all, so that's pretty handy. So, very interesting ability, has some kind of, quote-unquote hidden costs. Just be aware of all that stuff around it. I also wanted to say that Shuri's Alter Ego ability really mimics what she does as a signature ally for T'Challa by, entering play and searching your deck for an upgrade that way. So I thought that was a pretty cool touch. And I should also highlight that with the Genius trait, Ingenuity, which is a really nice little resource generator, and Moon Girl, one of the most powerful allies in the game, become cards that she can use. And because of this, because Moon Girl requires mental resources to trigger, I think if you're trying to really optimize Shuri, certainly in something like leadership, for example, you might really look to add mental resources to your deck to make sure you get the maximum card draw from playing Moon Girl. Focusing back on Black Panthers, the hero form, we cannot really evaluate the special on Black Panther upgrades until we see the new Black Panther upgrades. So far, they have revealed 2 of them, obviously 1 copy of each, and that is going to be Kimuro Beads, hopefully I'm saying that right. We're just going to call this card Beads from now on, and Spider Bites, which I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing mostly correctly. So the Beads are a 2-cost upgrade, remove 1 threat from a scheme. You may discard this card to confuse an enemy, and this marks a theme we will see throughout both these cards, which I think we'll see throughout what is probably her 2 other unrevealed Black Panther upgrades, because these are the Black Panther upgrades. These are the ones that you're going to be triggering, where, your basic abilities and a couple of events we'll look at shortly. They're all 2 costs, and they all have this thing that says you may discard this card to do this extra ability. So when Black Panther, let's say, uses a basic form, she remove 2 threat, she can then trigger the special on the beads, which will remove another threat. It's almost like forwarding for free, except this extra 1 threat removal can be put on a different scheme if you so desire, anything like that. And then you have a choice. Discard it to get it confused, or keep it around to use again in the future. This character is inherently full of choice. What tech or Black Panther upgrade do I get turn 1? And then what sort of Black Panther upgrade am I going to trigger afterwards? And when I've chosen the one I'm triggering, am I going to discard it for an extra benefit? So there's a lot going on here. I think certain lines of play will be more desirable. So I'm actually really excited for this. This is my kind of hero. I will say straight up, this character does not strike me as top of the tier list, super ultra powerful, going to, blow everything up on the table and, be, really, really powerful. But I think that's a good thing, because if they release every hero like that, it's really, overshadows some of the old ones. I think this character actually has to work for what they want to do, but will not struggle, will not be weak, but will not be incredibly powerful. And I think that's good. I think nature is healing. This is kind of a side tangent, but I was thinking about it earlier. Of the last 26 characters, which is all the heroes from Sinister Motives through to the end of the Mutant Trilogy, 26 heroes, I would say 20 of them are in the top half of heroes, and 6 or maybe less of them are in the bottom half of heroes currently. That's how I would rate it, which is way, way more in the top half. So seeing a character that's not just instantly maybe in that top half, or at least at the top of the top half, I think this is kind of a reasonable place for a hero to be. That is kind of fine. I'm kind of good with this. And that's just a first impression. We'll talk through the whole character and see how things end up. But just wanted to put that out there. My kind of thoughts are, if you have any one Black Panther upgrade out, you'll just trigger the first line, remove 1 threat removal, and in the case of the beads, and keep it around. But maybe if you have a couple around, you're going to want to start to discard one to get a bonus, and then the subsequent times you trigger the special, you can choose the remaining one you've got in play. Maybe the one that has the ability you want to keep around more, that's more useful to you. So a lot of choices here still, and I quite like the beads. I think having that confused is really useful because her inventor ability is so strong that I kind of think Black Panther is what I'd call a frequent flipper. She wants to keep flipping form, changing sides, going to alter ego. Maybe not every single turn. There are some reasons not to, particularly some sort of aspect combos which more reward staying in hero form. But nonetheless, I think getting that tech or Black Panther upgrade kind of cheapened, put into play for you kind of thing, I think is very, very good from her alter ego. So yeah, threat removal confuses to help with going alter ego. I think this is very good. Then we've got Spider Bites, another 2-cost upgrade, Black Panther, so on and so forth. Choose a player. Deal 1 damage to the villain and each minion engaged with that player. You may discard this card to stun each of those enemies. Now, this is going to be especially useful with the new vulnerable keyword that's coming in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Some of the enemies get discarded when you stun them, so being able to discard a bunch of minions potentially with this is pretty good. But for most scenarios, for most situations, this is just 1 damage to all the characters, and if you want to stun, it's probably mostly going to be effective on the villain, and that's fine. So this will be better, obviously, in scenarios with more minions and maybe with more players, so you can choose someone who's happened to get multiple minions, which will, occasionally happen. So kind of interesting here. What both of these cards mirror are the cards from T'Challa, Black Panther, with Tactical Genius. The first line here, not the bracket text, saying remove 1 threat from a scheme. So that the beads, remove 1 threat from a scheme. And then with Spider Bites and Energy Daggers, the line here is choose a player, deal 1 damage to, the villain and each minion. So everything that Shuri Black Panther has as Black Panther upgrades seems to mirror what T'Challa has, but T'Challa's have an extra bonus if it's the last one in a sequence, and Shuri doesn't have sequences, but she can discard them for a bigger bonus. Now, what's interesting here are that, in my opinion, particularly at 1 and 2 player counts, I feel like Energy Daggers and Tactical Genius are typically the least valuable Black Panther upgrades, and they're the only two they've kind of shown us mirrored. So if she has 2 other Black Panther upgrades that mirror Panther Claws and Vibranium Suit from T'Challa Black Panther, in the core set, that's actually quite a step up. I think Panther Claws, let's say the ones for Shuri kind of mimic this. If you could deal 2 extra damage every time you basic thwart, 2 thwarting 2 damage, that's really, really good. Vibranium Suit, healing you and dealing a damage is also really good. They're just generally more applicable, more powerful than 1 threat removal, more powerful than 1 damage to the villain and a minion. If you only have 1 minion, in my opinion, there are exceptions, especially if there's a tough and it's a convenient way to do it. But nonetheless, I think these are pretty good, Panther Claws and Vibranium Suit. So if she does have a version of these that she can trigger, that's going to be quite a step up for her. So fingers crossed. I think if they do Vibranium Suit, since the other cards give, confuse or put out stuns, it makes sense for the card that heals you to, if you discard it, give a tough status card. Whereas if she has an equivalent of Panther Claws that deals 2 damage and then discard for a bonus, that bonus could be kind of anything. It could be even more damage. It could be readying. It could be card draw. It could be anything. So kind of excited to see what she has, but I really hope she does have something on the level of Panther Claws and Vibranium Suit with that, first line of text, because I think that would be a significant gain for her compared to what she has. Something else I want to point out about these upgrades is that they kind of remind me of Nebula's techniques. So there's a smaller bonus, and when they get discarded, you get the bigger bonus. Obviously, they're triggered in very different ways, but I thought it was kind of interesting to consider that and how it might play out for Black Panther. Going back to Shuri's alter ego here, we can use Inventor to exhaust Shuri and search your deck for one of these 2 upgrades. And, if it's turn 1 for me, she only has 1 attack. Maybe I'm going for Spider Bites. It's going to depend on the scenario. It's going to depend what starts out in play, things like that. And I'm really hoping, again, that her 2 other Black Panther upgrades are slightly more powerful than these. So I'm not sure I actually go for either of these with the initial ability use, but we'll have to wait and see what we get. So I'm not going to speculate too much on this, but I thought it's interesting to consider. And I do think you are going to want to, as I kind of said, end up discarding these, at least some of them, fairly frequently, because otherwise, your deck's not going to reset and you're not going to have any tech left in to use this really powerful alter ego ability. You do have aspect tech you can put on there, but with a bad draw, or using this ability quite a lot, you can kind of empty your deck of tech, just like Cyclops can run out of tactic upgrades when he's alter ego. So interesting to consider. Something that's really going to help Shuri of this is she has an upgrade called Aja Adana. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. This is her title upgrade, and her title upgrade is 1 cost, action, so it works in alter ego and hero form. Exhaust Aja Adana, shuffle 1 identity-specific card from your discard pile into your deck. So you can trigger the special on one of your Black Panther upgrades, discard it for the extra bonus, then put it back in your deck for when you go Ultra Ego to use your inventory ability, and that's actually really, really good. It's going to be quite a fun gameplay loop, I think. The downside here is that you're playing this one cost upgrade, and you put something back into your deck, but the upgrade itself hasn't done anything. If you already had good tech in your deck to use your inventory ability, you haven't even really gained anything because you probably could have gone and done that. So it's not always going to be necessary. It's not always going to have a big benefit, especially immediately. So it's a bit of a slower tempo, not a huge immediate gain to put this down on the board. If I'm under pressure, I'm not playing this card. If the board is completely open and I think I'm probably going to get some use out of it, yes, I will. It's not a card that I would never play, but it's not a card I would desperately play. Just to give you guys some kind of idea how much of a priority I see this card as. Lastly, I want to say that combined with having to exhaust for her Ultra Ego ability, Aja Adane here, the title card, is not the most speedy card in terms of immediate output or anything like this. It's probably going to appreciate some faster tempo options built into her deck. Events or allies that make an impact are probably going to be very desirable while she sets up and moves around these identity specific upgrades and things. So just something to keep in mind that I think she is going to benefit from in terms of flow of the gameplay and keeping the game under control and staying ahead of the villain. To summarize briefly, because we kind of went over a lot here, I think she's going to be a frequent flipper, want to go Ultra Ego a lot, because A, her Ultra Ego ability is amazing, and B, Ingenuity and Moon Girl, the genius kind of cards, are only going to be playable when you're Ultra Ego, and they're very beneficial. Just be aware that her Ultra Ego ability Inventor, very, very good, but you are going to have to exhaust. It's got some hidden kind of costs, a bit slower tempo, just like her title card, which can start to refill your deck. And, you might just want to lean into mental resources when deck building, if you're including Moon Girl, to make sure you get the maximum amount of card draw. As a hero, she will enjoy readying to trigger her Black Panther upgrades, but we don't know if she's got any readying in her kit. It doesn't look like it from what we've seen, but there's still room for it, so we're not sure how often she'll be able to trigger those specials per turn outside of aspect cards. There's no Quicksilver ready up every turn kind of thing that we've seen. And we have only seen 2 out of what I'm assuming are going to be 4 Black Panther upgrades. So it's, we can theorize about half of what she could trigger, but that's a very limited amount of stuff. That's half the choices, and I'm guessing the least powerful half. So I'm a little bit cautious to speculate further, but keep that in mind. And lastly, as I kind of just said, don't want to build too many slow things into the deck, like, too many upgrades and supports overall. So you might want to include some tech for her Ultra Ego ability, which we're going to go into in detail soon. Just because, you'll need to actually deal with what's in front of you, maybe make some progress. So, allies events going to be beneficial. So we've talked about Black Panther and how we can use a basic power to trigger the special on the Black Panther upgrades. We talked about 2 Black Panther upgrades we have seen so far, but we have not talked about the other ways to trigger these specials. But let's look at her events. So we've got On the Prowl and Clawed Strike, which are both 2-cost events. One is 4, one is attack. They are basically the opposite versions of each other. On the Prowl says hero action, remove 3 threat from a scheme, resolve the special ability on 1 Black Panther upgrade. So for me, this is a little bit underwhelming. I'm going to be honest with you. 3 threat removed for a 2-cost card is not good. Triggering the special ability on a Black Panther upgrade is good, but I kind of feel like we need a slightly better ability to really justify this. Because with what we have, let's say I'm going to use On the Prowl to trigger the Beads Black Panther upgrade. I'm going to get 3 threat removal from this, 1 from the Beads. It's 4 threat removed. It's basically for Justice a core set card as a hero card here. But I need to have the right upgrade in play to actually trigger this. Of course, she's almost always going to have one of those. You can split where that 1 extra threat removal goes. So, I mean, it's a little bit useful, but it depends how you're valuing the cards here, because the actual wording with the special is printed on the Black Panther upgrades, but to trigger them, it's either coming from her hero card or it's coming from the event card. So are you attributing that 1 extra threat removal from beads to the upgrade, as you might with Heroic Intuition? Or is it actually, the power kind of coming from the cost of the event card or the bonus from being on the hero card? Where is that value coming from? Because if you attribute it to the event, then it makes the upgrade seem a lot worse. If you attribute it to the hero card, it also makes the upgrade seem worse. I don't know. I feel like if this said remove 4 threat and trigger the special ability, I wouldn't hate it. But if she happens to have a Black Panther upgrade which deals 2 damage rather than 1 threat removal, it would also be a nice boost to this. So we'll have to wait and see. Clawed Strike I prefer. It says deal 4 damage to an enemy, then resolve a special on a Black Panther upgrade. I think 4 damage is a little better than 3 threat removal. 3 threat removal is very good for like player side schemes and solo, that kind of thing. Nonetheless, I quite like this design. You have really solid cards that do something you want. Threat removal damage, not in too huge of a chunk, so it's always relevant. Overall, I feel like they were slightly cautious here. I can compare it to a lot of other characters which will have an upgrade which does something valuable, and an event which does something valuable. And the event is not kind of underwhelming, but triggers an upgrade to kind of make up for the cost. So it's just kind of, again, like Black Panther T'Challa. You have to sink some money into getting an upgrade out to make his Wakanda Forever valuable. I think it's kind of a little bit the same here. It's fine, but just be aware it's not, overwhelmingly powerful. It's surprisingly very well balanced. Overall, I just think they're a bit cautious. There are a bunch of characters which have a good upgrade which does damage and a good event which does damage, that kind of thing, which don't rely on having, a slightly underpowered event to trigger an upgrade to make up the value that way, and then the upgrade doesn't do anything else on its own. It's not a one-for-one comparison with any of these. I do think, there is some flexibility in Shuri's upgrades. You can discard them and, get the extra benefits, things like that, but it was something to consider. Following her events, we have the last cards revealed to us, which is her signature ally, T'Challa, which is a forecast ally. My first thought is, can she afford this? Well, the last card is Vibranium, and that's, a very familiar card to everyone, I think. Part of the Black Panther T'Challa from the core set, the hero kit. He's got 3 copies of this. Looks like she's got 2. That is kind of a slight guess, but I think it's a pretty safe bet. I think the odds of that happening are overwhelmingly likely, so I'm just kind of running with that in my kind of predictions and, analysis here. So T'Challa, 4 cost, 2 fort, 2 attack, Genius and Wakanda traded. Very interesting that they gave T'Challa the Genius trait here when they did not give him the Genius trait in the core set, when Spider-Man and Iron Man in the core set did have it. T'Challa is, even I know, I don't read comics much, but even I know T'Challa in the comics is generally considered to be one of the most intelligent people, I think, on the planet. So I'm really glad he is a genius here. So 2 fort, 2 attack, 3 hit points. A little bit underwhelming for forecast, but his ability is when he uses a basic power, so either attack or thwart, resolve the special ability on a Black Panther upgrade you control, being, the beads or the spider bites respectively here. And that was really exciting when I first read it, and I still like it, but I am a little bit underwhelmed. I think as a focused ally, it needs to do something quite strong, and I think I need to see stronger Black Panther upgrades, like a version of the claws of Vibranium suit from the original Black Panther, to make this a little bit more valuable for me. But overall, the value isn't blowing me away. I think it's fine, but it kind of reminds me of the value of an average to above average aspect ally rather than a signature ally. If T'Challa here, let's say he attacks for 2 and triggers a Spider Bites Black Panther upgrade, it will be reminiscent kind of maybe Richter or Diamondback. Richter is the more accurate comparison. He also has 2 attack, and he typically does 1 damage to each minion engaged with you. And even for free cost, I don't really play Richter at all. It's not quite the same, but it's reminiscent. T'Challa has that forwarding option, which is stronger, and there'll be different Black Panther upgrades to trigger. But that's just an example. We also have characters like Rogue, Ant-Man, and Snowguard. Rogue being a new protection ally, Snowguard being a slightly older basic ally, Ant-Man being Wasp's signature ally. Rogue can get slightly higher stats, but will deal damage to someone. I would say T'Challa is better than Snowguard, roughly the same, maybe slightly better than Wasp's Ant-Man, and around the same level as Rogue. That's kind of my impression of it. We also have cards like Gambit, Daredevil, and Feral, Gambit being Rogue's signature ally, and the others being Justice allies. Gambit has basically the exact same stats as 4-cost T'Challa, and after he attacks, he gets to ping a damage, which is very similar to triggering Spider Bites. He does it for a cost less, but it's not exactly the same. It won't hit all minions. There are differences here. Daredevil pings Feral pings damage. It's not exactly the same, but it's close enough with his stat line that I'm not blown away by T'Challa, but I think he is fine. One of the funny things about T'Challa as Black Panther Shuri's signature ally is that you can actually play the Black Panther leadership T'Challa ally in the same deck and have them both on the table at the same time. And this all works due to the difference in titles and subtitles. T'Challa on the signature ally is a title, Black Panther on the leadership ally is a title. Because those titles are different, you can have those on the board together. Now, the Black Panther leadership ally has a subtitle T'Challa, which does match the title of T'Challa, but the game rules do not match subtitles to titles. If they are different, it doesn't say anything. It doesn't even mention how they interact. Now, you might think you cannot have Black Panther on the table with the Black Panther hero, but we can have Spider-Man as a hero on the table with like multiple different Spider-Men because the subtitle are different. So, because Black Panther as the hero is Shuri, and the leadership one is T'Challa, it's just not conflicting. You can look at all the little bullet points, and it just doesn't quite line up properly to counter it, which is really, really weird. It feels like an oversight, and like they might correct it, but if they don't correct it, putting the Black Panther leadership ally into your deck with Shuri is going to be a way to reliably use their new team-up card in maybe solo or without the other hero if you're in multiplayer, which is kind of funny. I don't know if this is going to stick around. I feel like if they haven't mentioned it in the insert, they will post something saying this is unintentional. But nonetheless, I thought this was really funny and worth mentioning. And we can talk about the team-up card here. It's basically Wakanda Forever from the original Black Panther, it will trigger a bunch of your Black Panther upgrades, but before that, it will also search your deck and discard pile and put a Black Panther upgrade into play. So I think that's kind of fun. I'm going to have to wait and see in play to how useful it is. With anything half the Black Panther upgrades we have for Shuri, T'Challa is quite expensive to set us up for at least, solo gameplay. So yeah, I'm going to hold off saying anything too much about this just yet. What is extremely cool about this team up event is that it doesn't matter which hero is, Ultra Ego or in hero form. You do have to be in hero form to play this card, but let's say T'Challa is in Ultra Ego, you can still use this. Most team up cards do not work this way. They're quite restrictive in both heroes having to be in the right form. So this is really, really good. So to summarize, and I'm actually not sure if I really pointed this out to begin with, but Black Panther's events are flexible in what they can trigger. If I have 2 Black Panther upgrades on the board and I place attack event, I can choose to get more damage or some forwarding out of it, which is kind of a nice little kind of bonus there. So kind of an extra small layer of versatility. But I don't think their efficiency is through the roof, considering some of the value of what they trigger has to be attributed to the cost of playing the upgrade, or vice versa. You can say no, the event is perfectly efficient, but then maybe playing the upgrade was inefficient. So somewhere there is inefficiency within the chain of playing things. And since we don't know everything yet, I can't say anything too exact. T'Challa, again, I'm mildly underwhelmed, but I do think he's very, very interesting, especially with builds that are going to support him, which we will go into shortly. And just having money, the 2 Vibranium is really, really good. Overall, looking at his cards, checking all the numbers together, it's looking like this. He has 2 of his attack cards, 2 of his forwarding cards, obviously the signature ally before that, 2 Vibranium resource cards. We then have the title card, the beads, and the spider bites. Overall, this is fine. What I'm kind of predicting is something that looks a little bit like this. So for card number 6, it's probably an event. It could be a defense event, or it could be kind of a combination event that triggers maybe multiple Black Panther upgrades or something. I'm not too sure. But it could also be a player side scheme. I think the evidence for it being a player side scheme is that in her aspect cards, there is a ally that searches for a player side scheme. It's really, really good, but they've only shown off one player side scheme in the aspect itself. Now, there could be multiple aspect player side schemes or a basic one, because it feels weird to me they'd have an ally around player side schemes, but only put one player side scheme in the entire precon. So either I think she's bringing 2 player side schemes in her deck building cards, or she has one herself, not too sure, but it's probably an event. Number 9, I'm guessing it's a support card. My partner actually said, she's probably got a lab card, right? And I was like, yeah, sure, it's lab. That makes sense. Probably to do with tech or something to do with that, maybe mental resources. Number 10 is probably an upgrade, I'm going to guess. I think if she has the Radiant card, this is probably the one, or the event, number 6. And then 13 and 15 are probably the other Black Panther upgrades that we are missing. But we'll see. This is all just speculation. I've got no inside information. I got to reveal some Nick Fury cards. I don't know nothing about what's coming out for Black Panther, and I might not until she is out. So we will have to see. So now, before I do my overall rating for Shuri, we're going to go through some of the aspect cards and builds that she's going to like. And you guys have been waiting for this. She finds tech upgrades. She has tech upgrades. This is repurposed territory. Will you repurpose the spider bites or, Black Panther upgrades? I think not. I think that's an emergency play, but it is an option. So repurpose, 0 cost, discard a tech upgrade you control, ready your hero, and get a stat boost. And because she triggers her Black Panther specials when she's the basic abilities, ready's really good for her. She's got all this tech stuff going on. Repurpose is just the card for Shuri Black Panther. It feels like I cannot wait to try this. I love repurpose, and I'm very, very excited for it. Now, because she likes readying up, in protection we also have What Doesn't Kill Me, and something to note here is that this has a physical requirement. Repurpose and most of the tech cards in protection have energy. Moon Girl kind of asks for mental resources, so there could be some conflict of resources in her kit, as not having the Avenger trait or X-Men trait or anything. She doesn't have access to something like Quinn Carrier to generate a wild resource to make this easier. So we'll see how this plays out. I also think if she has an equivalent of Vibranium suit that heals you, there's a world where you have too much healing because it's a cost to actually heal to ready up with What Doesn't Kill Me. So if you don't have enough health missing to heal up, you cannot actually ready your hero with this card. There are a few things at odds here that mean you might have to focus more than expected. The main tech cards in protection that we're looking at are Old Faithful Energy Barrier and Force Field Generator. I've had a few people mention Force Field Generator. I'm a little bit more skeptical on that myself. I think it's going to be useful. It can create a lot of breathing room, but I just think Energy Barrier is A, better, and B, cheaper. I think using your Ultra Ego Inventor ability to grab Energy Barrier is going to be a perfectly good choice, and then you can eventually repurpose it. So that's going to be very, very good. I think 3 times repurpose, 3 times Energy Barrier goes into practically every single Shuri deck ever made in protection. And it's going to be good. It's going to be really good. Now, because Shuri can defend and trigger spider bites, she can actually deal damage in the villain phase innately in her kit if she so desires. I think that, combined with Energy Barrier being able to reflect a point of damage to an enemy in the villain phase, puts Change of Fortune on the table. Do I think this will be her best ever build, and will it be great to absolutely focus on this? Probably not optimal, but I do think it could be fun. Looking at the tech for the other aspects and things, Sonic Rifle is one of the first thoughts that popped into my head when I saw her ability. It confuses an enemy, so it's going to let you go Ultra Ego again to use your inventor ability, maybe invent another Sonic Rifle or something. So this is just a good card. Confuses are good, Sonic Rifle is good. Having a cheaper way to get that in play, to set you up to keep going Ultra Ego and get other things in play, it's just all good. It all feeds into itself. And Hand Cannon being an aggression, I mean, it's the only tech in aggression, but with her one base attack stat, unless there's something to increase her basic attack stat, I don't know. I think you might include this if you do play her in aggression, but it's not looking good for aggression based on the tech available. Plasma Pistol, I just don't know if it's quite good enough to make the cut for Shuri. I think if you're running Repurpose and you want extra targets, it could be fine, but it's definitely not something I'm desperate for. I think if deck space is very tight, I could see Plasma Pistol getting cut, but we'll see what other tech is available. It looks like we're getting new tech cards throughout this wave, just based on what I've seen in Nick Fury's precon and in Shuri's precon, and Shuri and Nick both having multiple tech cards. So we'll see. I think there could be one or two new tech cards in each aspect, and that would completely open up everything Shuri wants to do in any aspect. So speculating any more than this on how her decks might play out with these tech cards, I don't know if that's a great use of our time, when it could all change. Speaking of tech, I just quickly feel like I have to mention Leah Fitz and Gemma Simmons coming in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. box as well, because Shuri likes the shield trait on any side. She's not going to be able to reduce the cost of these, so I don't know if they're that efficient, but they do let you find tech cards and generate resources for tech cards, and she does obviously like tech cards, so worth a mention. I don't personally think it's going to be worth it. Paying free cost for these is just too much slow tempo when she's already got some other tempo considerations. Because her Ultra Ego ability is good, anything that makes it easier to go to Ultra Ego, particularly in solo play, is going to be very desirable. Most of those things can be found in Justice. We've also got Psylocke in Aggression, so that's something for aggression here. And I think all these cards will be potentially quite good for Shuri, whether they confuse the villain, increase the main scheme of threshold, or let you look at boost cards and rearrange things to make going Ultra Ego safer, to make sure advanced or a giant boost card isn't waiting for you. To that end, we do have the new player side scheme. I'm not going to go through into full details here. I'm probably going to do a video on all the new stuff, because this is quite a complicated card, but it does let you rearrange the top of the deck as well, which can make going Ultra Ego safer. If we are confusing the villain, the usual Float Like a Butterfly package could be interesting. Now, setting up Float Like a Butterfly is generally quite a slow play here, so is Banshee, so I'm not entirely sure she's going to love it, but I think it's something to mention. I think if one of her other Black Panther upgrades is an attack, that could be useful with this, so it's something to keep in mind. Mostly though, because she wants to ready up, I think Justice Served in Justice is going to be really useful for her, get some more triggers of her Black Panther special upgrades, and if you're using her basic powers, then Hurricane Tuition is going to be really good, particularly in multiplayer where there's more threat to remove, and making an entrance goes quite well with the whole basic forwarding thing. Leadership has a ton of good stuff. Sidekick and Side by Side for T'Challa is actually what makes me excited for T'Challa, because you get to ready both characters, and then you get to trigger more Black Panther specials like crazy, and I think that's really, really fun. We also have You Got This from Magneto's pack, so the last wave of content really coming through for leadership with these fun options. It's honestly really exciting to be able to talk about a readying deck in leadership, so that's really cool. If we are trying to set up Sidekick T'Challa, we might want some other upgrades and things for him. Reinforced Suit is actually a tech card, so you could use your Ultra Ego ability to grab it, put it on to T'Challa, for example. Even though you missed out on one of the resource costs, it's just an interesting thing to consider. Some other useful cards here are going to be Beast, who can get Vibranium for you. Domino, who, if you have a tech card in hand that you want to play with your Inventor discount, she can put it on the top of your deck, swap something for it, and then you can use that Inventor ability. I thought that was interesting. Probably a bit too niche. I don't see myself using Domino too much with Shuri, Black Panther, but I thought it was worth pointing out. Now, if we have Sidekick for T'Challa, and maybe some ways to increase his health and stats, readying him up is going to get us extra value. It's easier to ready allies than it is to ready heroes, and if the ally, when ready, triggers the same special that the hero does, this could actually be quite good. So I think that's really fascinating. We have a couple of new basic cards which could also benefit from readies. We also have a couple of new basic cards which might benefit from readying, that being the Dora Milaje. Hopefully I'm saying that right. We've got the support here, free cost, which is a new kind of web of life and destiny to support a couple of the new allies. It has the Wakanda trait, and you ignore the cost if your identity has the Wakanda trait. So both T'Challa and Shuri get this in as a 0-cost card. Action, exhaust it, resolve the special ability on one Dora Milaje ally, and heal 1 damage from that ally. So that's pretty good, I think. A 0-cost card that's going to keep healing your special allies and triggering the specials on them is really, really good. We haven't actually seen all the allies we're getting for that trait yet. There's at least 1 more. I'm guessing at least 2 more. But the first one is Okoye. So Okoye is 4 cost, 2/4, 2 attack, 3 hit points, just like T'Challa. has a Wakanda trait just like T'Challa, but also has that new trait here, which will work with the new support card. And after she uses a basic power, resolve the special ability on another ally with the Dora Milaje trait. And we haven't seen what the other one is yet, and this is kind of a downside in that you play her, but if you haven't got the other one or two or however many we have out, you can't get any benefit from this. But if you do have another one out, you could probably get some pretty good bonus. Her bonus is choose a Wakanda hero or ally. There you get +1 forwarding and attack. And if you have readying, which you're going to like on your Wakanda traded Shuri hero, there's just a lot of combos at work here. You could also use this to boost up the T'Challa ally and then ready him up as well. So there's tons of stuff that can work together here. I put Atlas Bear as well here, who came, I think, in Domino's Precon from the Next Evolution box. She has the Wakanda trait, but I think that's about where the synergy lies. I don't see a lot of decks using her, but I thought it's worth mentioning that there is another Wakanda ally out there that you could include in your deck. Now, there's one kind of downside to the whole sidekick kind of build and the whole Dora Milaje kind of new stuff coming in, is that I think these are pretty slow to get going. If I play the Dora Milaje card and I've got none of the special allies out for it, it's not doing anything. And if I play, Okoye and I haven't found the other, stuff that matches her traits, it's just not doing anything. Combined with how Shuri has, a couple of slower tempo considerations, I think your mid game could start to be good. Your late game is going to be very good potentially here, but your early game could be pretty tricky, notably for solo play. So a word of caution here: if you find yourself getting overrun and having bad starts to games with Shuri Black Panther, maybe these builds aren't the ones to try. A quick shout out to Panther in pool. I think stick-to-itiveness, which readies us up when we spend a physical resource. Readying Shuri is very, very desirable. There's a few other things here. We can use Get Ready to ready up T'Challa or any of the Dora Milaje allies. Tic-Tac-Toe to help heal them. We've got Self-Confidence and the other triple resource cards, which benefit from you having more hit points. And if we do have a Vibranium suit to heal up, fingers crossed, that will be good, but that's kind of speculation. Not my responsibility to help us go Ultra Ego. The last aspect to talk about is aggression, and it's looking a little bit dire here. I think because she kind of gets rewarded from Ultra Ego, I think Hall of Heroes is maybe a better inclusion here than on a lot of characters, but after that, and even with that, it's a slow tempo card. Hone Technique, she's going to have Wild with Vibranium. She might like Mental Resources for Moon Girl. So Hone Technique liking Mental Resources for its various abilities is going to be, there's some synergy there. This is also a slow tempo card, especially for one player. So I'm a little bit skeptical, guys. I'm not 100% set on Hone Technique for her. I think maybe at 3 and 4 player, this becomes more appealing. You can do kind of some of the Black Panther stuff around using Hone Technique. If she's like the original T'Challa Black Panther, some of her other upgrades we haven't seen yet might be weapons that we can exhaust for Fusillade, which has, really good combos here. But yeah, have to wait and see on this one. Same for Yarnborn. I like this on the original Black Panther because some of his upgrades, when triggered, count as attacking, so you get multiple opportunities to use this. I don't know if any of hers are. I'm kind of throwing it out there as I'm just kind of clutching at straws for what actually truly synergizes with Black Panther. You could have good builds for her in aggression, but there might not be any special synergy of cards talking and interacting together on a deeper level. So something to keep in mind there, based on what we've seen. But new aspect tech cards could completely change all that. I want to give a quick mention to Shatterstar, who can pull minions to you from other players. So if you've got a minion out and your friend has a minion out, you can pull that minion to you. Then you can trigger Spider Bites maybe once or twice or 3 times that turn and start to shred multiple minions engaged with you. So that is a thing that can happen, but I really feel like I'm clutching at straws for aggression. One of the last little notes I want to mention is, again, Moon Girl. Moon Girl is very good, so cards which let you play Moon Girl repeatedly throughout one deck cycle are very, very powerful for genius characters. Chance Encounter and Suit Up being 2 of the most notable ones. So if you lean into that, that's going to be very, very good. Maybe not particularly unique. I don't know that Shuri Black Panther can do this better than, I don't know, Spider-Man Peter Parker, but it's certainly something you can do. The last note to talk about are side schemes. Most of them have free threat removed in solo to be defeated. That lines up really well with her threat removal card. And I think Rally the Troops will be nice with the Dora Milaje and T'Challa that heals them. And I think Lock and Load, if she does have a weapon, which I guess if you're in aggression, you probably do have hand cannon, but if she does have a Black Panther claws kind of weapon, that could be useful too. Not too sure. Really clutching at straws for aggression here, but those are my overall thoughts so far. So to summarize, I think aggression, we'll wait and see before I say anything definitive, but just this basic forwarding, reading builds, confused builds that maybe lean into float, kind of interesting. Leadership has the Dora Milaje stuff. Now, I do think all the aspects, actually, and I should have probably mentioned this more, can benefit from the Dora Milaje, different allies, and sort of, extra new little trait package thing. But leadership will obviously take more advantage of the allies and get kind of more out of them. We talked quite a lot about the sidekick for T'Challa, but you can even just do, some of the readying stuff without T'Challa. You could just have You Got This, the new card from Magneto, and it would still probably be kind of interesting and maybe quite good. And then stick-to-itiveness in pool, obviously, is going to be pretty good if you can get that out. If that's at the bottom of your deck, it might not be the most synergistic aspect until you get to that point, but I think that's pretty fun. And then my obvious favorite for this, which only has one option I'm really looking for, but I think it's going to be so good for her, and that is protection with repurpose. I cannot wait for this. I think it's going to be extremely fun. As far as existing heroes go, that might play a little bit like Black Panther Shuri, so you can get some idea whether you might like her or not. I think the original Black Panther is obviously there because he's got these different, Black Panther upgrades you trigger the specials on. Uh, he doesn't have the same kind of choices she does, but there is still an element of choice and sequencing in a lot of what he does. We've then got Nova, which might surprise people, but when Nova uses a basic power, it readies his helmet and gets him a resource. When Shuri uses a basic power, triggers a Black Panther special. Both the helmet for Nova and the Black Panther upgrades are something these characters can put out from their alter ego abilities on turn 1, so they're just getting rewarded using their basic abilities, and sometimes it might be more desirable to get the effects from their responses than natural basic abilities themselves. It's not exactly the same, but Nova also has events which deal 4 damage or 3 threat removal. There's a couple of tiny similarities, but also Nova, the order of operations, sequencing can get really quite in depth, and I think making the correct choices for Shuri, it's going to be quite a little puzzle, which I think might, it's vaguely reminiscent. Nebula, we already talked about the techniques, having, this kind of smaller bonus, but then when they're discarded, it's big bonus, which is very similar to how Shuri's Black Panther upgrades work. And then we've got Iron Man, and the tech link is obvious. They're both going to really like tech cards, more than these other characters we're looking at here. But Iron Man also with his, Stark Tower and things, he's, able to get tech back from his discard pile, maybe a little bit like her title. There's just a couple of similar things there as well. But none of these characters are a perfect match for Shuri Black Panther whatsoever, but I think that's exciting. She's not got an outrageously crazy design like, let's say, something like Domino or Psylocke or Deadpool, but she has a lot of choice within her kit, and I think that's going to make playing her a really engaging experience. That's going to be different game to game, and I'm really looking forward to that. Now it's time to make my predictions. I know this is what a lot of you have been waiting for. For damage, I'm not that impressed yet. Spider Bites is 1 damage everywhere, which is fine. It's useful for toughs and stuff, but it's definitely not going to win any awards for the highest damage. 1 attack stat printed on there. I'm not overwhelmed by her attack event, so I'm going to have to see some Black Panther upgrades that specialize in damage, maybe, a version of T'Challa's Panther Claws. So we'll have to see how that goes. Fording, I think, is quite good, though. I think having this base 4 of 2 on her hero card, and then the ability to use her alter ego inventor ability to get the beads on turn 1, kind of going to set her up for the rest of the game, potentially forting for free every time she uses her basic fort. I think that's pretty strong in itself. The fact that her attack card can also trigger the beads to get extra forting that way is going to be quite useful. It's going to be kind of reminiscent of using Concussive Blast on Bishop to then ready up and fort for 2, which is something I've enjoyed. So I actually think threat removal for Black Panther will be pretty good here. Survivability, it's hard to say. She's got 11 health. She's got a way to stun an enemy. But there's nothing defensive here. I don't think she's particularly motivated to defend, so we'll have to see quite how that shakes out. I could maybe see this moving up 1. I think if she has a Vibranium suit that heals her, this could really go up, because you could trigger that repeatedly every turn. You get a massive amount of, Wolverine-style healing, which could be, a game changer, but we'll have to see. Economy, I've got it 4 stars. Some people might be surprised that it's not 5. I did kind of go back and forth on this. Her alter ego ability is effectively giving her 3 extra resources per turn kind of thing, which is really good. But because you're exhausting, it's kind of, you're kind of paying a different kind of cost there. So I kind of had mixed feelings on whether to put this as 4 or 5. The double Vibranium is good too. It's not a triple Vibranium. There's no Golden City like Black Panther. Speed of setup, I put it 2, which again might surprise people because, oh, her alter ego inventor ability is going to set her up. But those cards come in and out of play, ideally, I think, at least after the first one. I don't see her as having a very quick start. I think it's going to take a while to build her up to a, really strong position. So if 3 stars is average, just nudged it down to 2. But again, maybe I'm underestimating the kind of difference that alter ego ability will make. We will see. But I'm not too convinced yet. Reliability, however, I put at 4 stars. Being able to get any tech or Black Panther upgrade in your deck turn 1 just adds a level of reliability. Her attack event, being able to trigger the forwarding upgrade, is kind of a level of reliability. You can kind of find those extra ways to get extra threat removal or extra damage where you need it by triggering those upgrades. So I think that kind of versatility is kind of an underrated aspect of her kit here. Card value, I put at 2 stars. So 3 is average, 2 is a little bit below that. This kind of just means, if I'm paying, a certain amount of resources for her cards, how much am I getting compared to an average hero? Because some of the value of her Black Panther upgrades comes from either her hero ability or, her ally, or, I just think the efficiency of what they're doing is kind of split up and spread out a bit. It's just not blowing me away in what these things do individually. And I also think the average 3-star mark for card value now, has been kind of boosted. If you look at the average hero card, thanks to all the X-Men, X-Force, and Web Warriors, and even Champions, their cards are generally very, very good. The average card value is not what it was during the first 3 expansions, let me tell you that. And she kind of feels more like an older school hero in that regard. Ease of play, I put it 2. I think the exhausting in Alter Ego will surprise people. I don't think everyone will be prepared for how to deal with, the slightly slower tempo early on. I think, they're making the right choice in what upgrades to trigger, which upgrades to play, which upgrades to discard, and when. There's actually quite a lot of complexity. I do think most players will be able to play her just fine and get pretty good results, but I definitely think she sways on the harder side if I was ranking all the heroes. Variety, I put at 3 stars. I think Readying stands out so much that it kind of maybe overshadows different things just because that's one of the ways you actually have to trigger her Black Panther specials more. Ranking her for power when we still only seen half of her Black Panther upgrades feels a little bit like, shooting in the dark, but I do have a pretty rough idea where I think she's going to fall. And for me, and stay with me here, I'm saying somewhere between the 28th and 47th hero out of 58, and that's with, Hero 1 being the most powerful and Hero 58 being the weakest. We will have 58 by the time of Black Panther's release, but I think a better way to visualize this, because this seems like quite a big gap, is if I was making a tier list with 6 categories, I would be putting her roughly around these categories. Probably in the powerful one, maybe one down from that. But nonetheless, I think she is going to be perfectly playable, very, very good. I think there's a world, if she was released before the last 4 expansions, she is well in the top half of characters. But like I kind of said earlier in the video, I really think nature is healing. I think we should be getting more characters around the middle and not all of them almost jumping up toward the top. I think this is much healthier for the game long term. Otherwise, if it's just all powerful heroes going to be released one after the other, the old heroes are going to be made to feel more and more redundant. And it's not like it's a competitive game, but if 80% of the characters are this strong and then like 20% are this strong, those are going to start to stand out a lot more. So, long story short, I'm actually really happy with this. I think this is a good thing for the game and a good thing for the character. So, if I had to be really, specific about it, if I had to pick a certain spot, I'm going to say 33rd of 58, so a little bit below half. And part of that comes from the Genius support, but part of my concern also comes from the lack of Avenger or X-Men support, anything like that. This really does feel like a shot in the dark. So I would say, for me, somewhere in the 4th or 5th tier in a 6-tier tier list is kind of what I'm looking at. Hopefully that makes sense. This feels like it was a long video. Thank you for sticking with me. Check out my Nick Fury card reveal if you haven't already. If you're interested, you can see me and Nelson's live reaction to seeing Shuri Black Panther for the first time. That is on his channel. I'll put a link below somewhere in the description. And yeah, thanks guys. See you next time.